Yeah, man. I mean, I had to bring you back. This documentary got everyone talking, man. A lot of people want to know why you wasn't in it, man.
Well, first and foremost, I thought I was going to be in the documentary at first until I started talking to that director.
But if you look at it, it's all controlled. And then why is the CIA funding third world country record labels? Why is that happening?
You know that moment when you realize something isn't just bad, it's catastrophic? That's where we are right now with Sean Diddy Combs. Because while the world was busy debating his prison sentence, his failed pardon plea to Trump, and that chilling knife attack in his Brooklyn jail cell, something far more explosive was happening behind the scenes. And it all starts with a private jet. His private jet. The one he just sold in October 2025 under what we're now hearing were desperate circumstances. But here's the kicker. The new owners didn't just buy a luxury Gulfstream G550. According to sources close to the deal, they may have accidentally purchased a flying crime scene, and now they're the ones calling the police.
And this is the flight where Diddy said to her,
showed her the video,
testified
showed her
that
the freak-off video.
He showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm going to put this video out. I'm going to send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified
if it's true.
to that.
If the jury
if they believed her,
yeah.
That's coercion. They would have Cassie.
Let that sink in for a second. Diddy, a man who once posted smug Instagram stories of himself boarding that same jet with a smirk and the caption, "No place like home," is now watching from a prison cell as his former pride and joy becomes the latest piece of evidence in what feels like an endless unraveling. The tail number? Changed. The registration? Moved to San Marino, as if slapping a foreign flag on it could somehow erase what was left inside. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried, especially not when they're bolted to the wings of a $30 million aircraft. And the new owners? They're panicking. Because what they allegedly found wasn't just a few forgotten sparkling drinks bottles or a stray designer loafer. We're talking photos, recordings, physical traces of the so-called freak-offs that became the centerpiece of his trial. The same trial where prosecutors described his jet as more than just transport. It was a mobile extension of the parties where, according to testimony, women were coerced, filmed, and left broken. Now, imagine being the poor soul who signs the papers for that kind of legacy. You don't just get a plane, you get a nightmare.
Tick tock, the clock is ticking on Diddy because on Friday he finds out what his sentence is going to be, but today he found out what prosecutors would like that sentence to be, and it is vastly different from what his attorneys have suggested to the judge. Prosecutors want him to do 11 years, just over 11 years.
And let's talk about the timing, because does it ever scream desperation? October 2025, 6 months after his conviction, deep into his prison sentence, with his appeals going nowhere and his begging letter to Trump apparently tossed in the White House trash. This wasn't some savvy business move. This was a man dumping assets like a sinking ship jettisons cargo. Remember, this is the same jet that just a year earlier was whisking him off to Antigua while federal agents raided his LA and Miami mansions. The same jet he flaunted like a middle finger to the world, even as the walls closed in. And now, poof, gone. Sold for what insiders say was way below market value, because when you're Diddy in 2025, liquidity isn't about cash, it's about survival. The matte black exterior, the pet-friendly beige interiors, the entertainment system that probably saw things no one should ever unsee. All of it, gone. And the new owners? They didn't just buy a plane, they bought a liability. One that's now forcing them to make calls no one wants to make, to people who definitely want to listen. But here's where it gets even messier. Because this isn't just about a jet, it's about what that jet represents. We're talking about a man who, at his peak, turned private aviation into a lifestyle brand. Combs Air, remember? The placemat at the bottom of the stairs. The Instagram clips.
Like they once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
The way he'd stride up those steps like he owned the sky. Because for a while, he kind of did. And now, that same jet is being treated like a biohazard. And the questions are piling up faster than his legal bills. What exactly did they find? Are we talking about footage from those infamous hotel nights where, according to trial testimony, women were pressured into performances no one consented to document? Are we talking about physical evidence tying back to the raids where prosecutors found freak-off supplies? And let's just say, if you have to Google what that means, you're not ready for the answer. And perhaps most chilling of all, if this plane is this damning, what else is out there that hasn't been found yet? Because let's not forget, this is a man who, even after his conviction, still had the audacity to write a handwritten letter to Donald Trump, begging for a pardon. A letter Trump not only ignored, but mocked, dangling it in front of reporters like a cat playing with its food.
You know, I was very friendly with him. I got along with him great. and seemed like a nice guy. I didn't know him well. But when I ran for office, he was very hostile.
He said some not so nice things about you, sir.
Yeah, and it's hard, like you, we're human beings.
Right.
And we don't like to have things cloud our judgment, right? But when you knew someone and you were fine, and then you run for office and he made some terrible statements. So,
oh, would you like to see that letter? He teased before promptly doing nothing at all. And why would he? Diddy wasn't just convicted. He was exposed. The trial didn't just put him behind bars, it laid bare a decade of allegations so grotesque that even his former allies are running for the hills. We're talking about a man who, according to his own sentencing judge, used his power to abuse women physically, emotionally, and psychologically, in ways that went far beyond the charges he was actually convicted of. A man whose own lawyer tried to spin his swinger lifestyle as some kind of defense, only to watch the jury see right through it. And now he's in a place so brutal they call it hell on earth, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where the beds are steel, the mattresses are thinner than a dime, and the last guy who crossed to the wrong person ended up with a knife to his throat. Oh wait, that was Diddy. Just a few weeks ago, according to his own team, he woke up to a shiv at his neck, a not-so-subtle message from the kind of people who don't care if you used to hang out with Jay-Z. Welcome to the big leagues, Sean.
And I think Sam Bankman-Fried were in the unit that was one floor above mine. So in terms of like the setting, it's a fairly decent chance that the room I'm describing is similar to where Diddy is.
And yet, even from behind bars, the hits keep coming. Because while the world was focused on the knife attack and the pardon plea, his legal team was quietly filing appeals, arguing that the judge acted like a 13th juror when he handed down that 50-month sentence. But here's the thing about appeals. They're a Hail Mary. And when you're a man with over 100 lawsuits still hanging over your head, each one more explosive than the last, even a Hail Mary starts to look like a waste of breath. We're talking about accusations that span decades, women and men coming forward with stories of coercion, of being plied with substances, of being promised careers that never materialized, of parties where the line between exclusive and exploitative wasn't just blurred, it was erased. And now, with this jet resurfacing like a ghost from his past, it's starting to feel like the walls aren't just closing in, they're caving. So let's recap, because the sheer audacity of this man's downfall deserves a moment. Here you have Sean Combs, a guy who built an empire on the back of bad boy swagger, who turned himself into a brand so powerful that presidents and A-listers alike wanted to be seen with him. A man who, even as the allegations piled up, still thought he could charm his way out of it. Who, after being convicted, had the nerve to write a letter to Trump, as if their decades-old friendship meant anything anymore. As if Trump, a man who loves nothing more than a good betrayal narrative, would lift a finger for someone who once called him out. Spoiler alert, he didn't. And now, Diddy's sitting in a cell staring at cinderblock walls while the last remnants of his old life, his jet, his freedom, his reputation, are being picked apart like vultures on a carcass.
So apparently Diddy's knee has been bothering him recently, so he reported it. At some point, it was decided that he needed medical care outside of the jail, so he was taken to a Brooklyn hospital.
And the wildest part? This might not even be the worst of it. Because if the new owners of that jet did find what insiders are whispering they found, we're not just talking about another lawsuit. We're talking about another investigation, another round of headlines, another layer of this saga that's already so twisted it feels like a bad Netflix series. Except it's real. And Diddy? He's not the director anymore. He's the guy in the jailhouse orange, watching his own life story play out without him. But here's the thing. Diddy didn't just lose a plane. He lost control. And when a man like Sean Combs loses control, the fall isn't just hard. It's spectacular. Because this isn't just about a jet, or a pardon, or even a prison sentence. It's about a legend. Self-made, self-destructed, watching his entire world get dismantled, one humiliating revelation at a time. And if this plane is the tip of the iceberg, buckle up. Because the way this story's going, we haven't even seen the worst of it yet. Now, let's talk about that letter to Trump. Because if you thought the jet sale was desperate, wait until you hear what he was really offering in exchange for his freedom. And trust me, it's the kind of deal only a man with nothing left to lose would even dare to propose. But that's a conversation for another time. Right now, we're still staring at that plane, wondering just how deep the rabbit hole goes. And something tells me we're about to find out.
And so the judge, again, seemed to be taking that matter pretty seriously and just pretty much said that, everyone, the judge, the attorneys, the witnesses' attorneys, the accusers' attorneys, they all have to adhere to these professional rules. They all have to adhere to this professional conduct. And if this continues and if more things are said that get onto the judge's radar.
And that's where things start to get really interesting. Because if we're being honest, Diddy selling that jet wasn't just a fire sale. It was a calculated fire sale. And the destination? San Marino. San Marino. Not the Cayman Islands, not some shell company in Delaware, but a tiny European microstate that most people couldn't point to on a map. Now, why would a man who once moved in circles with presidents and power brokers suddenly park his most prized asset in a place so obscure it might as well be a tax haven for fairy tales? Unless, of course, he wasn't just selling a plane. He was trying to bury it. And if that's the case, then the real question isn't why he sold it. It's who he sold it to and what they were supposed to do with it once they had it.
It's probably leaning towards guilt. Now, on the racketeering, I agree with you that the predicate acts may be found, but that's not all they need. There's an ultimate question. The first question on the jury verdict form is, do you find him guilty or not guilty of racketeering? Before you even get to the predicate acts, which you only get to if you find guilt, they could just be hung up on that question and say, this guy's not Tony Soprano. I am not convinced that I even want to find guilt on the act.
Let's rewind for a second, because this isn't the first time Diddy's private jet has been at the center of a very convenient escape. Remember March 2024? The raids on his LA and Miami mansions? The FBI swarming his properties while he was conveniently jetting off to Antigua? That wasn't a coincidence. That was a man who knew how to move fast when the walls started closing in. And now, a year and a half later, with his back against the wall again, he's pulling the same playbook, only this time, instead of flying away, he's selling the plane. But to whom? Because here's the thing about San Marino. It's not just a random dot on the map. It's a place where privacy is currency, where ownership can be shuffled, renamed, and rerouted until no one's quite sure who's holding the bag. So when we hear that the new owners are the ones calling the police, that's not just bad luck, that's a miscalculation. And for a man like Diddy, who's spent decades perfecting the art of the deal, a miscalculation this big doesn't just happen. It means someone didn't play their part. Or worse, someone flipped. Now, let's talk about that letter to Trump. Because if you thought the jet sale was a sign of desperation, this was the nuclear option. A handwritten plea for a pardon, slipped to the White House like a love note from prison. And not just any pardon, a personal favor from one New York power player to another. Except here's the thing about Trump. He doesn't do favors, he does transactions. And when he dangled that letter in front of reporters like a cat with a mouse, he wasn't just humiliating Diddy. He was sending a message. You're not special anymore. The same man who once rubbed shoulders with presidents, who threw parties where the guest list read like a Forbes 100, was now reduced to begging. And not even the good kind of begging, the kind that gets you a meeting, a handshake, a maybe. No, this was the kind that gets you laughed at. Because let's be real, Trump didn't just say no, he performed the no, he made a show of it. Oh, would you like to see that letter? He teased, before tucking it away like a souvenir. And just like that, Diddy's last Hail Mary turned into his most public rejection yet. But here's where the plot thickens. Because that letter wasn't just a cry for help, it was a distraction, a way to keep the spotlight on Trump, on the White House, on anything but the fact that back in Brooklyn, the walls were closing in faster than ever. And while the world was busy laughing at the pardon plea, something far more sinister was happening behind the scenes. Because let's not forget, Diddy didn't just write that letter, he mailed it, from prison, where, according to his own team, he'd just survived a knife to the throat. Now, in a place like MDC Brooklyn, where the beds are steel slabs and the mattresses are thinner than a credit card, that's not just an attack, that's a message. And in the kind of place where R. Kelly and Ghislaine Maxwell learned the hard way that fame doesn't buy you safety, a message like that doesn't come without context.
Between the two times I got in a terrible concussion. And so I'm coming down with the concussion, the drugs, my brain really not working well. They assigned me a bunk, top bunk, center of the room, right under these fluorescent lights. And that little tiny strip was my only bit of like turf in the world. I had a little locker off to the side, but that bunk under the fluorescents in the middle of that room, sound coming up everywhere.
So let's connect the dots. Because while Diddy was busy playing chess with Trump, someone in that jail was playing chess with him, and that knife at his throat, that wasn't just some random act of violence. That was a warning, a reminder that in a place like MDC, you're only as safe as your last move. And Diddy's last move? Selling a plane that by all accounts was loaded with more than just leather seats and a good sound system. So was this retaliation? A signal from someone he crossed? Or just the cost of doing business when you're a man who spent decades collecting enemies like their Pokemon cards? Because here's the thing about prison. It's not just about the time you're serving, it's about the debts you're paying. And Diddy's got plenty. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because while the knife attack was making headlines, there was another storm brewing, one that didn't need a shiv to cut deep. We're talking about the lawsuits, over 100 of them. Accusations spanning decades. Women and men coming forward with stories that, if even half of them are true, paint a picture of a man who treated people like disposable assets. And now, with this jet resurfacing like a ghost from his past, every photo, every recording, every trace of what went on inside it could be the key to unlocking a whole new wave of legal nightmare. Because let's be real, Diddy's trial? That was just the beginning. The conviction? That was the appetizer. The The main course? That's the civil cases, the appeals, the new investigations that could come knocking now that there's physical evidence floating around in the hands of people who are actively talking to the police.
Did he? Or didn't he? Well, if he didn't, he's got a lot to explain. Well, apparently what Diddy's done now, which is a very interesting thing, is he's on the offensive of sorts. That's right, Sean Diddy Combs has initiated a $100 million defamation lawsuit.
And that's where we start to see the real genius, or the real stupidity, of Diddy's last few moves. Because if this jet is as damning as insiders say it is, then selling it wasn't just a fire sale. It was a gamble, a bet that whoever bought it would keep their mouth shut, a bet that the past could stay buried. But here's the thing about gambles. Sometimes you lose. And when you're Diddy, losing doesn't just mean you're out a few $1,000,000. It means the entire house of cards starts to tremble. Because if the new owners did find what they're rumored to have found, we're not just talking about another lawsuit. We're talking about another criminal investigation, another round of headlines, another layer of this saga that's already so twisted it makes Tiger King look like a PBS documentary. So let's ask the question no one else seems to be asking. What happens when the man who built an empire on secrets can't keep them anymore? Because right now, Diddy's not just fighting his conviction, he's fighting his legacy. And every time a new accuser steps forward, every time a new piece of evidence surfaces, every time some random buyer of a secondhand jet starts making calls to the cops, that legacy gets a little more toxic. The jet wasn't just a plane, it was a symbol of power, of excess, of a life where the rules didn't apply. And now it's a liability, one that's circling back like a boomerang, ready to hit him right between the eyes. But here's the real kicker, because while we're all focused on the jet, and the knife, and the pardon letter, there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and that's the money. Because Diddy didn't just have a jet, he had mansions. He had businesses. He had deals with the kind of people who don't just walk away when things get messy. So where's all that money now? Because if there's one thing we've learned about men like Diddy, it's that they don't go down without a fight. And a fight means leverage. It means allies. It means people who still owe him favors, or people he's got something on. So while the world's busy counting his losses, let's not forget, Diddy's still got cards to play. And if history's taught us anything, it's that he's not afraid to play dirty. So where does that leave us? With a man who's lost his freedom, his jet, and, if the rumors are true, his last shred of deniability.
Credible evidence whatsoever to support these claims he's alleging. There's no evidence about it. I mean, what do you do when you think I did this stuff and there's no evidence whatsoever? You're out of your mind. You're crazy. There's no evidence of this. Now, his attorneys argue that the documentary maliciously portrays him as a monster and draws unfounded comparisons, they allege, to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the lawsuit...
A man who's staring down the barrel of a future where the only thing he controls is how loudly he goes down. And if this jet is the tip of the iceberg, then we haven't even seen the wreckage yet. Because the thing about icebergs is, they're big. And the thing about Diddy's past is, it's messy. So while we're all sitting here, watching the fallout, there's one question we should all be asking. What else is out there? What other planes? What other properties? What other secrets are still waiting to be uncovered? Because if there's one thing we know about men like Sean Combs, it's that they don't build empires on one dirty secret. They build them on dozens. And if this jet is any indication, we've only just started digging. So tell us, what do you think is still hidden? Because something tells us this story is far from over. And when the next shoe drops, well, let's just say you'll want to be watching. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the higher they fly, the harder they fall. And Diddy? He was always flying too close to the sun. Goodbye for now, but not for long. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that this saga is just getting started.